The Anglo Zanzibar War holds the title of the shortest recorded war in history. This conflict lasted only 38 minutes, occurring on August 27, 1896, between the United Kingdom and the Sultanate of Zanzibar. To understand the context and the remarkable brevity of this war, it's essential to explore the political background, the events that led up to the conflict, the battle itself, and its consequences. Zanzibar, an island off the coast of East Africa, was a significant and strategic location during the 19th century. It was a key hub for trade, particularly in slaves, spices, and ivory. By the late 1800s, Zanzibar was a protectorate of the British Empire, with the British exerting considerable influence over its political affairs. The Sultanate of Zanzibar was ruled by a monarch, the Sultan, who governed with significant autonomy, but under the watchful eye of British interests in the region. The British had helped place the Sultan in power and maintained a firm grip on the island's economy and foreign relations. By the 1890s, Sultan Hamid bin Thuwaini, who had been a British ally, died unexpectedly on August 25, 1896. His death set the stage for a power struggle. The British government had strong preferences for who should succeed Sultan Hamid. They favored Sultan Hamud bin Muhammad, who was seen as pro-British and someone who would maintain British interests in Zanzibar. However, Sultan Khalid bin Barghash, a more nationalist figure, seized power without British approval, placing himself on the throne. He was backed by a faction of the Zanzibar military and the palace guard, but his actions were seen as a challenge to British authority. The British, displeased with Khalid's rise to power, demanded that he step down and allow Sultan Hamud to take the throne. They gave him an ultimatum: either he abdicates and leaves the palace, or the British will take military action. When Khalid refused to comply, tensions rapidly escalated. On the morning of August 27, 1896, the British gave Sultan Khalid a final deadline to vacate the palace. The British had already stationed a fleet of warships off the coast of Zanzibar and had prepared their forces to take action. Khalid, however, was determined to hold on to power and refused to surrender. At 9:02 a.m., after Sultan Khalid did not comply with the British demands, the conflict began. The British opened fire on the palace and the defenses of the Sultan's forces. The fighting was primarily naval, with the British bombarding the palace from their warships. The Sultan's forces, which consisted mainly of poorly equipped palace guards, artillery, and a small number of soldiers, were no match for the modern British artillery. The British forces included 3 cruisers, a smaller royal yacht, and a number of smaller boats, while the Sultan's forces were mainly composed of about 2,800 men, but most of them had little training and outdated equipment. The Sultan's palace, where Khalid had taken refuge, was also under attack. The British forces were equipped with heavy artillery, including large naval guns, which they used to bombard the palace. The Sultan's defenses included only a few artillery pieces and a small number of soldiers armed with outdated rifles. The British forces quickly destroyed the Sultan's artillery positions, disabled his military defenses, and set the palace on fire. The Sultan's navy was also heavily damaged or sunk by British fire. The British had effectively neutralized the Sultan's ability to resist in just a matter of minutes, but the fighting continued for another 30 minutes. By 9:40 a.m., Sultan Khalid had fled, seeking refuge in the German consulate, as the British forces advanced and seized control of the situation. The Anglo Zanzibar War lasted a mere 38 minutes. In that short time, the British had destroyed much of the Sultan's military capabilities and captured key positions. Sultan Khalid's resistance was crushed, and he was forced into exile. The British installed Sultan Hamud bin Muhammad as the new ruler, who quickly became a puppet monarch under British control. Khalid, after seeking refuge in the German consulate, was eventually exiled to Réunion, an island in the Indian Ocean under French control. Sultan Hamud, who was installed by the British, ruled Zanzibar with British backing, solidifying the British grip on the island and the surrounding region. The short duration of the war was a clear reflection of the overwhelming military superiority of the British Empire at the time. The conflict also underscored the extent of British influence in East Africa, where they had significant economic, political, and military power. The war had little long-term military impact but represented the end of a short-lived nationalist resistance in Zanzibar. The war also demonstrated the degree to which colonial powers were willing to intervene in local affairs to secure their interests, even in the face of minimal opposition. While the Sultanate of Zanzibar remained formally independent for several more decades, British influence continued to dominate until Zanzibar gained independence in 1963. The brevity of the Anglo Zanzibar War is primarily due to the disparity in military power between the two sides. The British Navy was a formidable force, and their artillery was able to decimate the Sultan's forces with very little resistance. The Sultan's army was poorly equipped, with outdated weapons and few modern defenses. In military terms, the conflict was over almost as soon as it began because the forces supporting Sultan Khalid had no realistic chance of winning. The rapidity of the British victory is one of the reasons why the war is so famous, as it is a remarkable example of the overwhelming power that colonial empires could exert in the late 19th century. Despite its extremely short duration, the Anglo Zanzibar War has a place in history due to its peculiar brevity and the geopolitical context. It serves as a reminder of the power imbalances of the colonial era and how quickly conflicts could be resolved with the overwhelming technological and military superiority of colonial powers. Interestingly, the war's historical significance is often overshadowed by its dramatic and almost comically short duration. Yet, it serves as an important reminder of how the British Empire, at the height of its global dominance, could change the course of history in mere minutes. In summary, the Anglo-Zanzibar War is not only the shortest war in recorded history but also a reflection of the broader dynamics of imperialism, where political struggles were often settled with a rapid and overwhelming display of military might.